Okay. Good evening, Rajat here. Now, after a long break, actually, I have started to record more tutorials related to manual testing and testing in general. Actually, in between, I was not able to continue with the sessions due to some other work priorities that I had. But I have decided to allocate some time, and I'm really happy to have received some really positive and encouraging comments from some of the members that are watching the videos. So thanks guys for your comments. I'll also be coming up with more Marathi tutorials as well as some English tutorials. So the English tutorials that I'm bringing in, I'm planning to make sure that they have English explanations done in a very slow and systematic manner so that it is easy to understand for those who are expecting it in Marathi as well. But obviously, for each English video, I'll be having one corresponding Marathi tutorial because that's what I had intended in creating as a part of my channel. So welcome back guys, and I'm really excited to share more videos with you. So without taking up more time of yours, this is the simple topic that I'm planning to cover today. So it is about functional testing. Okay. So as a part of functional testing, what all type of testing we perform, so that is explained in this next slide. Okay. So basically, these are not the formalized types, you can say, that are the actual testing types, but these are the testing, techniques, or you can say the testing that is involved in the actual functional testing of an application. So whenever, if you're working in uh, software testing already, so these are the testing that you actually perform when you test any particular application. So in the functional testing, we have object properties coverage, we have input domain coverage, database testing or backend coverage, error handling coverage, calculations, manipulations coverage, links testing, cookies and sessions. Okay. Now, I will go through each and every point. I have not actually written any explanation, but I can explain to you verbally. So in object properties testing, okay, so what do we mean by object properties? So whenever you have any application, say if it is a web application, there are certain things that you notice as a part of that particular application. For example, if there is any link or any handle on that website, you can see a cursor that I'm moving in on this slide. So that cursor or like that arrow is changed to a hand like symbol if I go on some link. So those kinds of things are there. Or suppose if I'm going to this particular link, and when I'm hovering over this link, that's when this text is actually it gets bolded or kind of highlighted if I'm just moving on that, or if I'm trying to disable something, or whatever text that is displayed. So there are the objects that you see on web page. They have certain basic properties, like the basic behavior of their, like how do they appear, what is the text, how is the font, if I hover over that, how is the application showing some different behavior, or whatever that we're expecting. So all that is a part of object properties coverage. Okay. In input domain coverage, we have certain different things. Okay, like for example, if you're filling up any form in web application, I'm just giving you a high level examples. So whenever I am asked to enter my first name, there is some length check done as a part of that application. So whenever I'm putting in any input for anything, they put some constraints. So the character length should not be greater than 200 if I'm trying to enter name. Obviously, nobody's name is greater than 200 characters, right? So there are such different constraints. So length validation, you can say, for the input, or the format validation. So if I'm entering an email address, there should be @ and dot in my email address. So that particular format check is done. So those kinds of validations are there. And other than that, I have written some short forms or abbreviations, which is BVA and ECP. Okay. Now, what do we mean by BVA? It stands for boundary value analysis. Okay. And ECP stands for equivalence class partitioning. Okay. Now, to give you like the broader perspective or explanation about that is, whenever okay, I'll give you an example of your mark sheet. All right, so in our school days we used to have a grading system, or in our diploma days or engineering days we used to have some classes. Now the system has changed a little bit, but in general we used to have a first class, we used to have a second class, we used to have a higher second class and a distinction. So for that they had certain ranges for which that particular value was given. So for example, if I say that whoever is scoring 75% or more should be given distinction, and whoever is falling between 65 to 75 should be given first class, and so on. Now, in boundary value analysis, what we do is we have some boundaries. Okay, here you can see that the boundary is 75. Okay, so that means the people who are 75 or more have a different grade or a different class. The ones that are below that are having a different class. Similarly, there is another boundary that we have, which is 65. So whoever is falling between 65 to 74, they have a first class, and below that they have second class, and so on, whatever we have. So that's the boundary value analysis. So whenever in an application you have certain ranges of values where you know that the conditions change as per you go above that boundary value or below that boundary value. Okay, and now based on that particular value we formulate some classes. So this is ECP, means equivalence class partitioning. Okay, so these are actually related methods. So in boundary value analysis, what we do is we find out the boundaries, and based on those boundaries we make some classes. Okay, so what class do I have as a part of ECP? Now whoever is scoring more than 75%, okay, 75 or more, they are all those values in between 75 to 100 that I have, they fall into one class. Okay, which is a distinction class, of course. Now whatever values are between 65 to 74, they are in a different class. Okay, so that is another class. So equivalence class partitioning, what it does is it again makes the divides the input data or the test data into different classes. Now the use of these two techniques is that we have a huge range of input values available. Okay, like if I'm even considering who gets the distinction. Okay, so the values between 75 and 100, even if I consider all the decimal values between that and all the values, okay, it's very difficult for me, even with the automation testing, to test with each and every value there. So what we try to achieve using these two methods is that we only take or only pick the crucial value. So there is an error between the boundary values, like the immediate boundaries of an application. So if I have to test the condition of who gets which class, what I'll do is I'll have a certain set of values. So I will take one value as 64, because 64 is one less than 65, so it is not going to fall in that first class category, it's going to be below that. So I'll take one input as 64, I'll take another as 65 because it's my boundary value. Okay, and now in the next what you can say, in the next class I will take an input as 75, and I will take one input as 76. So what it does, this method basically decreases the number of inputs that you want to test with. So with this, what you can do is you can just check with the boundary values, one less than that value and one greater than the maximum value. So with that you can have all your possibilities covered, because those four input values cover all your conditions that you want to test. So you don't need to test with each and every value in that data set or in that data range. You can just find out what boundaries you have. You can divide the input in different classes, and for that class you can take or you can pick up one value which is actually very close to your boundary value, because that's where there is a possibility of error to be present. So sometimes it may happen that an application is giving me a different result. So actually what I'm expecting is the person who is scoring between 65 to 74 should be getting first class, and a person who is getting 75% or more should get a distinction. But what if they make the range as 65 to 75? So if I'm selecting a candidate who has got 75%, even that is actually given first class but not the distinction. So there is that error. So there is a huge possibility that mostly your errors are present on the boundaries, and these particular methods minimize your input data, and they help you figure out if there are any issues which are very close to boundaries. So you don't have to test with a huge set of input, and this is a very useful method when you want to test any application thoroughly. Okay, now in database testing or backend coverage, we have different kinds of queries, right? So we have queries like, we have DDL commands, we have DML commands. So whenever you are doing any, performing any activity, and if that is actually inserting any data in the database, you can just fetch the records from there and you can see if that data has been added or updated or so on. So that is a backend coverage that you can test. Okay, error handling coverage, it's one of the very important things that you would test with an application. So whenever you are doing some unexpected behavior, if you're trying to put in some values that should not be accepted by that application, and if you want to proceed with that, so for every such event it should throw you some error. It should give a user a meaningful message that that will convey what exactly is the issue. So those errors, like if they are actually being handled properly or if the application is crashing in that situation. So testing that is another important thing that you would do as a part of functional testing. Okay, now calculations and manipulations coverage, obviously. So if your application is making some calculation based on the inputs that you are providing, you can just double check at your end if the calculation is correctly happening or not, or if there is any error in that particular calculation. Okay, so link testing. So links, there are very like many links present in any application that you can see nowadays. So some are the internal links, so that would help you navigate to different pages of the same application, or some other external links. Okay, that would take you to a completely different site and make you do some other functionalities like enter your email address for that particular account and then come back to this page or so on. And there are some broken links that you can find as a part of the application. So clicking on that, you will just end up going to some page which is either not found or that's a broken link. So figuring out if your links are working as expected is very important. Okay, now let's see what do we mean by cookies and sessions. Okay, so cookies are just temporary internet files actually, which are created at the client side when we open any website. Okay, so they contain user data. So what cookies basically do is, they actually help you for a faster experience when you're trying to do something. So all the data, that like user data, is actually stored in cookies. So we don't actually explicitly test cookies, but for sessions we definitely do test certain things. So if you're using any application, all right, there is a session timeout that is set for that application. For example, if I'm on a bank site, and if I'm idle there, or if I'm logged in from like next last 1 hour, and if I'm still on that bank page, actually it's expected that the session should get timed out and I should be automatically logged out of the application. All right, and after that happens, I cannot use any functionality which I could have used logging into that site without logging in again, which would be another session. So checking the session timeout, and if the session is actually not getting timed out before the intended time, or it's not even going beyond the intended time, so that particular thing is something that we should take into consideration. Okay, so in functional testing, these are the major things that we usually test when we are testing any application. Okay, so I believe you have got a clear idea of all these things, and if you have any questions, you can just post in the comments section, and I'll just clarify that from my end. Okay. uh, yeah, so that's it I had for this tutorial. Thank you guys. Thank you.